Hi guys, DPG here. It's been a while, but I just finished doing a voiceover audition and I had to speak before I forgot what I just learned that is going to be so valuable to you. And that is, oftentimes I find myself, maybe you do too, and let me know if you do in the comment section below. I find myself thinking about what they want. And I do study the writing, and I've created an entire program on how to analyze text because you can more or less detect what they do want, and really what they want is the story that is written in the text. But then where does the text end and where do you begin? And then once you figure out where you begin, then ask yourself, where do you end? And really, the actor's job is to be creative. And that is to forget results. Once you know the results, they are there. Okay, great. I get the story, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. But what do I do with Goldilocks? What do I do with Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear? What do I do? And here's what I'll tell you. I just finished my audition and I did a fine job. It required a British accent, which requires a little effort on my part, and deciding which accent of the British repertoire to choose. Even though it said, standard RP, then it started adding things in like, oh, he's sophisticated or not sophisticated, and you start going, oh boy, how do I work all of these little notes into this performance? And then I recorded it, and I did it a couple of times as it asked, and I thought, you know what? Sounds pretty good. I did 2 takes. There was some difference between the 2 takes. And then I sent it off. And of course, this is when the magic happens, because I was just sitting there in my bed thinking and saying the lines. And all of a sudden, they came out in this much more interesting, creative way with so much more life and naturalness. And I was just like, oh my gosh, where was this when I did the audition? And I find myself doing this time and time again. It's after I'm done, the clarity comes, and the clarity comes from not having any clarity, right? It's just doing it and letting the words flow without thinking about it. And it just got so interesting. It went from something like, you killed Michael with Michael's blade. Strangely poetic, don't you think? And I thought, that sounded pretty reasonable. And then I thought about the words say strangely poetic. So what would make me say those words strangely poetic? And that would be, I would have to go through this process first. I can't just say the words and hope that it comes out matching how I would have to feel to say those words. So then I started to think, well, if I'm going to say Michael was killed by Michael's blade, strangely poetic, I would have to have that thought. And so I was like, Michael was killed by Michael's blade. Strangely poetic. Or something like that, right? It was just a whole real moment. And that, look, they may book me for what I did. I don't know. We never know. Often I've booked everything from being flat as a pancake and not having all of this creativity. But to make something real, you have to have the reality happen to you slightly before you say it. So if you are going to say something is strangely poetic, it has to strike you as strangely poetic. And then you can say it any way you want, but say it as you feel it. So, wow, this guy was killed by his own knife. Strangely poetic, isn't it? Right? That may be how I say it. Or if it's more dour and a serious, situation, I just might say it kind of to myself, even though he is in earshot. Michael was killed by Michael's blade. Strangely poetic, don't you think? Right? There's so many different ways to do it, but one of them is real and comes from actual feeling, and the other one comes from, well, I read it. It sounds like I could say it this way, right? Like I pre-read it, so I'm not reading it for the first time. But I didn't have the feeling beforehand, right? I didn't live through it and then respond to the feeling. And this is just as important when you're doing a voiceover reading. And if you've done voiceover, you aren't supposed to read the other person's lines out loud. You just say your lines while looking at the other person's lines first, as though they're saying them, and then you just say yours, so they only hear yours. At least that's the way I have been taught to do my voiceover auditions. They don't want to hear the other person's voice because they're going to basically take that and maybe mesh it with somebody else's audition for the other parts and see how they sound together, and does this sound real and interesting in the way we want it. Anyway, that's it, guys. If you really want to get creative and you really want to book more auditions, then really feel something, see what it is you have to say, and then understand, well, what would it take for me to say that? You can do it line by line. I mean, sure, you can go through the entire thing and make sure it's all connected to the story, but I think the writing is naturally connected to the story. So if you think of these things first, Michael was killed by Michael's blade. That's strangely poetic, don't you think? You know, however you are. Once you come to how you feel, then just say it, because you're going to do it differently than anybody else. You don't need to come up with some clever way. Trust yourself, but have the creativity and the trust in yourself to not worry about the results. Don't worry about how the take sounds, even though their casting directors are going to say, do you want to do a clean take? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do a clean take. That was a messy take, but it was real. And just do it and then walk away and go, that was me. That was me, dude. Hope you liked it. And if you don't, that's fine too. But what you cannot fix is a lack of creativity. So bring the creativity. They can fix all the other stuff in post, and I will talk to you soon. Let me know what you think. And if you want to work with me as a coach, I'm kind of working more with, senior executives now, as opposed to actors, because I find they need what actors need almost more than actors do. But I'm still open to coaching actors, so get in touch and I'll talk to you soon.